All right. Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see you. Welcome to this beautiful event that we're going to be having today is the 3-day Venus challenge, and we're going to be meeting for the next 3 days. And I could not be more excited. We came up with this idea some weeks ago because we realized that Venus is going through some really special shifts and cycles. And I am absolutely, completely, incredibly mind blown by how specific the things that the cycle of Venus marks are, and how specifically those are the exact things that are happening right now in the world, collectively and individually. And so when I realized that, I felt like, okay, this is something that I really want to share with the community. This is something that I really want to share with you. And also, for a really long time, you guys have been asking us about the meaning of Venus and the calendar of Venus. Honestly, the calendar of Venus is so complex, so mathematically crazy, so specific that we, had to first do research for a few months before we felt kind of comfortable sharing about it and telling you guys about it with confidence. And so now here we are after months of deep, intense research, ready to share all about the secrets of Venus in the Maya world. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Sulvay Barrios. I'm the daughter of Carlos Barrios, a very famous, a very renowned Maya elder from Guatemala. I'm currently here in Guatemala, which is where I was born and raised, and it is such an honor to be here. I'm the co-founder of the Mayan Wisdom Project. The Mayan Wisdom Project is a project that I started with my dad, Carlos Barrios. He unfortunately passed away very early on at the beginning of the project, but I made it my mission to continue this project as a way to honor my dad's legacy because my dad was the best person in the world. He was an incredibly wise man. Some of you might not know him. Some of you might have read his book about the preservation of the Maya tradition during some difficult times that Guatemala went through, as there was a genocide here that tried to get rid not only of the people, but of the culture and the spirituality and the tradition and the information. So my dad, I can proudly say, was an incredible activist who devoted his entire life to the preservation of this tradition. And it is my honor in my life to continue with his legacy and to continue sharing a little bit more about this incredible wisdom, this incredible tradition. And that's what I've devoted the last 5 years of my life to, but I plan on devoting my entire life to it. And so I'm really excited to share a little bit more of this information on Mayan wisdom with you guys. So I'm just going to share quickly a slide right now just to show you a little bit what you can expect. What are the event logistics for this 3-day Venus challenge that we're going to go through together. It's really exciting for me. So we'll be meeting 90 minutes per day for 3 days straight. We can only host up to 1,000 people in the Zoom room, by the way, just so you guys know. Every teaching builds on top of the other, so you don't want to miss every moment. The way in which we planned this event was in order to give you guys like truly the super deep insights of Venus. And we realized that's not something that we can possibly do in one single day or in one single hour or anything like that. So we decided to make it a 3-day event. And the way in which we split it is a few different things. So, for example, we're going to have today more like the theory of the topic. So I'm just going to be sharing the theory, the history, an introduction to the actual topic. Tomorrow, you really don't want to miss tomorrow. We have a very special guest, Tata Alberto. He's an Ajkij. Ajkij means Maya spiritual leader with several decades of experience as a Maya spiritual leader who's going to be guiding us through an ancient and sacred Maya fire ceremony. Maya fire ceremonies are the single most ancient spiritual practice of the Maya tradition. And tomorrow, you guys are going to get to actually witness one, which is going to be super cool. The reason we wanted to do that is because We wanted not only to speak of the theory, but also the practice of how the Maya not only were able to predict things or understand what kind of cycle we're going through because of the shifts of Venus, but how they also mixed it with action, with practical things in order to be able to navigate the cycle in a really good way. And then on day 3, which is the last day, we're going to continue to talk a little bit about the theory, but a lot more about the practice. And we're going to leave you guys with some practices that we think might be game changing for the next 200 days because the current cycle of Venus will shift in around 200 days approximately. And so we wanted to leave you kind of like with the tools and the information that you need in order to be able to actually navigate this cycle in a strong and positive way. So I couldn't be more excited. All we ask from you is that you're 100% present, that you interact in the chat because personally I do this, but I think the rest of the team at the Mind Wisdom Project does this too. We love reading the chat. We get so many insights. Like I can't read it live because I'm obviously guiding the event, but every time I close the event, I just go and read everything that you guys have been writing. And it's always so interesting to me to see how you guys are connecting to this information, to see, how you're experiencing the shifts in energy. And so just stay until the end of it each day because, as I said before, every teaching builds on top of another. So the way I like to start events is with an invocation. In the Maya tradition, before you do anything, you usually set intentions. You greet the energies that enable your life and your existence. You practice a little bit of gratitude before you do anything. And that's something I like to do before I start any practice or any event. So on the screen right now, I'm going to be sharing a little invocation that we can do together. You don't have to do anything special, just connect in whatever way you feel most comfortable with. I'll read it out loud. You can read it out loud for yourself too if you want to. You can close your eyes and meditate. You can do your own version of it. You can just basically kind of like open your heart and open your mind and practice a little bit of gratitude because remember, isn't it kind of crazy that we're all here today, that there's a new day, that we're still alive, and sometimes we forget to express our gratitude or remember what an incredible miracle it is that we're even here in the first place. And for the Maya, in the Maya tradition, gratitude is the basis of everything, is the most important thing because everything you do, if you incorporate gratitude into it, it's going to be better. Trust me. So I'm just going to read this out loud and you guys feel free to just take a deep breath. You, do whatever version of it you want. And I'll be reading this out loud and hopefully these words are going to resonate with you guys. So, okay. At this moment, before beginning this conversation, we want to take some time to remember our creators and our makers. Alom, Caholom, Sakol, Pitol, Tepeu, Gukumats, and show them our gratitude for giving us the gift that is life. We say Matiosh Ukushkach, Matiosh Ukushuleu, heart of the sky, heart of the earth. Thank you to the energies of the 4 directions of the universe, the 4 elements, the 4 colors of corn, as well as their guardians. We especially call upon the energy of the word so that all of the words that are shared here can be flourishing and help us connect to one another. We ask this energy that the words we put out with our voices are caring and of value to the world. Okay, so I don't know exactly who's here today. I see some familiar faces, but I also see some new faces. So, because I don't know just how much you know about the Maya and Maya wisdom and who are the Maya and the Maya tradition, I know some of you know a lot because I've seen you around for a few years, but some of you might be completely new to this topic. Before I ever get into anything specific, such as the calendar of Venus, I just like to take a few minutes just to briefly explain who are the Maya for those of you who don't know. And here's the thing, you're going to be mind blown. So, because the Maya are incredible. So, well, basically, the Maya tradition and the Maya nations have resided for thousands of years in a region that is called Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica consists of the south of Mexico, all of Guatemala, all of Belize, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador. And for thousands of years, the Maya people have resided here. And I say for thousands of years because unfortunately, and let me already debunk this weird myth, I don't know where it comes from, but that the Maya no longer exist. That is not true. The Maya are still here. Around 50% of the population of Guatemala is indigenous, and they continue to wear their traditional attire. They continue to practice their spirituality. They continue to practice and hold the wisdom and the information of their ancient tradition, which has been passed on from generation to generation for literally thousands of years via the oral tradition. The oral tradition is wild because I mean, I grew up with it, right? Thanks to my dad. So I grew up like listening to all of the stories that he would tell me, and I grew up with him traveling all around Guatemala, visiting like all the ancient sacred places, like the Maya altars, as they call them nowadays. And the thing is, you know, I grew up very blessed to be my dad's daughter and to have the opportunity to kind of like connect to this tradition since the time I was a baby. I don't remember my first fire ceremony because my mom was carrying me in her arms. But basically, something that I've been so mind blown by since I started the Mind Wisdom Project is I've gotten to travel around Guatemala again, but this time by myself, and to meet new teachers all around the country from different Maya nations who speak different Maya languages. And the way in which the tradition is shared is exact, it's precise, word by word, literally. And I'm like, how do you pull that off? You know, like, how can you actually continue to express the same teachings again and again over thousands of years, millions of people passing it on in the exact same words? And that's something that I find very heartwarming and beautiful because now that my dad is no longer here, it doesn't matter. Every time I listen to a Maya teacher, to me, I'm listening to my dad speak because they're telling me the exact same words that he used to tell me. And I think that's so beautiful because not only does it connect us to the culture, to the spirituality, to the science, to the medicine, but it also connects us to the ancestry, to our ancestors, to be able to hear my dad speaking to me through other people who never even met me. And I know that a lot of people probably have this experience who also come from traditions and from nations that have the oral tradition. So the oral tradition is something that I deeply connect to and that I deeply respect. And so that's the way in which the Maya have been able to preserve their tradition, regardless of the incredible amount of atrocities that they had to go through, and just how many times, even up to this day, for many different reasons, their tradition has people have tried to destroy their culture, their tradition. And I think it's beautiful. To me, the Maya are warriors because they have preserved their geocosmovision literally many times at the cost of their own lives. That's how hard they have fought in order to preserve their tradition. I know my dad even risked his life during the Civil War, during the genocide, by writing that book. And I think that that's something that's so beautiful, that your culture is so rich, so profound, and that you know what potential it has to change the world, to change the way in which we communicate and coexist with nature, the way in which we communicate and coexist with ourselves as well as with others, that you see the importance of keeping it alive to the point that you're willing to give your life in exchange for continuing to pass it on. And so now I'm just going to share another slide and I'm going to get into a little bit of a deeper topic to continue introducing who the Maya are, but from a different perspective. And that is a big question. Is Maya wisdom primitive? And the answer is absolutely not. It's not. Okay. So the first thing I like to do when sharing with people, like who are the Maya, is to express to you just how incredibly advanced these nations, these peoples, these civilizations have been. I think in the modern world, unfortunately, our history is told wrong. And it's not just Maya history. So many times the history of oppressed peoples is told wrong in a way that kind of like makes them look like they're lesser, like they're primitive. Like so many times I've heard, yeah, the Maya, uncivilized, savage, all these kinds of things. And I'm like, what? What? You are so ignorant and you don't understand. But the worst part is it's not even your fault that you don't understand because I remember when I was a kid, and I used to go to school and I used to fight with my teachers because my dad had already taught me, very well what the Maya tradition is. And I was shocked to learn that in all of the history books in Guatemala, which is the heart of the Mayan world, we learn Maya history completely, totally incorrectly. We even get the biggest facts wrong in history books. Let me give you an example. For example, if you read any history book about the Maya, you'll discover that historians say, archaeologists, anthropologists say that the Maya were polytheists. That's not true. The Maya did not believe in many gods. Weirdly enough, the Maya didn't even believe in one god, actually. The Maya believed in something completely different. And I don't know. I feel like if I get into what the Maya believed in, I might never get to Venus because it's too profound, beautiful, and complex of a topic. But the fact that we even get the perhaps most basic fact wrong is like, a little worrying, like we can't even get the simple facts straight. But not only that, you hear in history books and you learn from your teachers at school that the Maya, were this uncivilized people and the Spanish came here, the Spaniards came here and civilized them and taught them language and taught them culture and taught them science and taught them whatever. And they were so impressed by mirrors that as soon as the Spanish showed the mirrors, they were like, whoa, this is crazy. And let us give you all our gold in exchange for mirrors. And this is such a terrible depiction of who the Maya were. Something I was talking about with Tata Alberto, actually, who you're going to meet tomorrow. He said, and I was like, yes. He said, you know, it's so crazy to think that in Europe, not too long before the invasion of the Americas or the invasion of Aviala, you know, Europeans still thought, for example, things such as that the earth is flat simultaneously. And now we're going to get into it soon. The Maya had the most mathematically accurate, perfect, and complex calendars in the history of humanity. They were measuring, the transit of all of the different planets in the solar system. They were aware of the Milky Way and the galaxy. They were trying to understand what the shape of the universe is. They basically, studied astronomy to a level that honestly, it took me months to just understand the calendar of Venus. That's how complex their calendars were. And not only that, right? They were masters of medicine. But when I say masters of medicine, I don't mean like, oh yeah, they were good with like a thing or two. No, They were living to be centenarians. At the time in Europe, people were dying in their 30s and 40s because of how unadvanced medicine was. I invite you to just read the recent discoveries of the last couple of years of Maya dentistry. When I read about that, I was like, oh my goodness, is Maya dentistry in the ancient world thousands of years ago as advanced as modern dentistry, or perhaps even more advanced? They had, you know, aqueduct systems, draining systems. I'm sorry, people were throwing their pee on the streets of in Europe at the time because like they just had no systems at all. The Maya had systems that literally brought clean drinking water to millions of people. They had systems that took seawater and removed the salt from it. They had systems where they imported stones that were able to filter water from regions far away. You can find that in Petén, for example. You have all of these traces of stones such as quartz and all of this water, I forgot the word, like storage places. I don't know the actual word, where you could see that the water was being charged, but it was also being, purified and cleaned so that everybody would have access to water. Their agricultural system, you have to take off your hat when you learn about it. It is jaw dropping, mind blowing, the way in which they built a civilization that hosted millions of people in the population and that everybody had access to physical healthcare, mental healthcare, spiritual healthcare. Everybody had access to education, to science. Not only was there mathematics and science and medicine and everything so incredibly profound and complex, but they made sure, oh, it's so complex, but let's try to simplify it so that everybody can understand it and everybody has access to it. Their architecture. I mean, come on, their architecture. In Guatemala, for example, El Mirador, we have the biggest pyramid in the world. We have all of these crazy things and phenomenons that happen architecturally, like in Mexico, right? In Chichen Itza, there's the pyramid of Kukulkan. And for the equinoxes and the solstices, the sun hits it just right. So half of the pyramid is darkness, half of the pyramid is light. And a ray of sunlight falls through the steps of the pyramid and it culminates in a big snake head built out of stone to represent the sacredness and the representation of the snake, of the feathered snake during solstices and equinoxes. So my point, I mean, look at it, like look at Oaxactún in Petén, for example. It's a living calendar. It's structures that tell us specifically by how the light hits the pyramids at different times of the year, where exactly we're at in time, and what exact astronomical events are happening. I mean, whatever. I'm gonna stop myself now. But my point is, Mayan wisdom is not primitive. And something that Tata Alberto and I were talking about recently is something that we found so crazy is that the Europeans came here and they took the gold, right? They enslaved people in horrible ways. They committed horrible atrocities and genocide, and so many people died in ways that honestly I don't even want to think about right now. But to me, now that we live in this Western modern world, right? And we think we're so civilized and we think we're so advanced. But look, this is the inheritance of that ancestry that is built on the basis of exploitation and destruction of the cultures and the traditions and the nations of almost the entire world. And something that Tata Alberto and I wonder is, what if instead of coming here and taking the gold, if they would have instead been excited to find new nations, to find new people, to go, wait a second, these people also have science, they also have medicine, they also have architecture, they also have spirituality, they also have like, let's find out what these people actually have discovered, what they've been working on. But you know what they did instead? And I think this speaks very loudly of what kind of culture this invaders were coming from. What they did instead is they took all the codices, they took all the books and they burnt them. For example, there's this famous one week in the south of Mexico where they built where they burnt all the books that they could find. There were so many books, thousands of years worth of science, medicine, architecture, all those things. It took 1 week to burn them. The town where I live, where the central park of my town is currently located right now, it has a dark history because I know that books were burnt there too. But what's psychopathic about it to me is that not only did they burn the books, they tied up the Maya people to poles and made them watch as their books were burning. To me, that speaks, like really horribly of the culture and the inheritance and the tradition that these people came from. And so to say that we were civilized, you're welcome because you were civilized, not funny because the Maya people were incredibly, incredibly advanced. They were the first ones to not come up with the concept of it, but to utilize it in mathematics, the concept of zero. Their mathematics are so complex. We have currently mathematicians and engineers working for decades on trying to crack them because they're too complex. It's just like the best mathematicians in the world are like, oh my goodness, this is too hard to understand. So that's how I always like to start things off by debunking those myths. Last one, 2012, the Maya never said it was the end of the world. Just in case anybody here believes that, let me just clarify that the Maya never said that. History Channel did, whatever. Anyways, so okay, now let's actually get after now you know that, after now you know how complex and advanced Maya wisdom is and the Maya Geocosmovision is, I want to get into the next topic, which is the sacred calendars. And for that, I'm going to share a slide with you. Okay. So before we get into the calendar of Venus, I thought, all right, I have to just explain to you the Maya calendar in general because of otherwise, you would be missing way too much context. And so basically, the Maya calendar, as I said, is considered to be, and it is recognized even in the modern world, as the mathematically most complex and accurate calendar in the history of humanity. And why? Why is that? Well, basically, the Maya calendar is not one single calendar, is the intertwining of more than 20 different calendars that intertwine together to such perfection we still don't really get it. We actually the wisdom of a lot of the different calendars that the Maya kept in ancient times has been lost. We're still trying to crack what exactly they were measuring, but the level to which they intertwine with each other, and we're going to see the example in the Venus calendar very soon. So intense. It's like crazy mathematically how they intertwine each other to perfection. So let me say, the Gregorian calendar, right? Well, it is the one we currently use. Like in the Gregorian calendar, today is the 3rd of May of the year 2025, right? And that calendar just measures for the time it takes for the Earth to go around the sun. It helps us measure where we're at in time, right? Like that's the calendar we use. We're like, okay, today is Saturday, right? Today's Saturday. Yeah, today is Saturday, right? And today is that date in that month, and that's it. It just helps us to measure where we're at in time. The Maya, on the contrary, had calendars that also help us to measure where we're at in time, but in a much, much complex and deeper way. But they also had calendars that help us measure where we're at in space, what's happening astronomically, what's happening agriculturally, what's happening energetically. For example, the Cholquij calendar, the most famous one, is known as the human level calendar, is the one that human beings are supposed to follow on a daily basis. Like the way we follow the Gregorian calendar in the Maya tradition on a daily basis, people follow the Cholquij calendar. The reason for it is it's a calendar that is considered medicinal. So the Gregorian calendar kind of makes you sick. It just measures time and that's it. The Cholquij calendar works for you It works for your physical health, it works for your mental health, it works for your spiritual health, and it works for your emotional health. Um, what do I mean by that? The Chulkij calendar is a 260-day calendar. Like one Chulkij year is 260 days that are divided into 20 days. There's 20 energies in the Chulkij calendar. 10 of those energies are considered to come from the cosmos and 10 from the telluric current of the earth. 10 plus 10 is 20. Then each one of those 20 energies has 13 different manifestations each. 20 times 13 is 260. So we move in 20-day cycles. And you know how on Mondays you work, on Sundays you rest? Kind of like usually, right? Like most people do that. Okay, the Chulkij calendar is like that, but in a much more complex way. It gives you guidance for everything that you're supposed to be doing in a 20-day cycle. For the Mayans, one of our missions in life is to become a whole human being. The Maya word for whole or full human being is Hunwinak. Hun means one, Winak means 20. To be a whole human being means to be at 20. The Chulkij calendar moves in 20-day cycles. For the Maya, the number 20 is sacred. So every single day of those 20 days, there is guidance on what to do. Some days you're productive, some days you rest to the perfect balance for your health. Some days you work on your relationships, some you work on your relationship inwardly, like with yourself. Some days are good for agriculture. Other days are good for forgiveness. Other days are good for gratitude. Other days are good for just rest. Other days are good just for productivity. Every single day in the Cholki calendar includes practices and things that we're supposed to do on a 20-day cycle. And if we do them all, I kid you not, you literally cover every single need that you have on every level. It's crazy. So the fact that their most basic calendar, which is the Chulki, they built it as a way to heal people as they're going through time, I think that's really meaningful. Then we have the Av calendar, which is the most similar to the Gregorian because it measures the same thing, how long it takes for the earth to go around the sun. That's why 365 days, just like the Gregorian calendar. 365 point something. I forgot, point 2422 or something like that. Um, and basically, it's 18 months that each last 20 days, plus one very short month called Wayev, which only lasts 5. It measures the rhythm of the seasons, is used for agriculture, is used to measure time. It's also used to measure how the seasons affect us. I don't know if you guys remember a few months ago, like we had, like, I don't know, 1.5 months ago, we had the equinox, right? The spring equinox. If you're in the northern hemisphere, we also did an event for that. For the Maya, that's very meaningful. It measures the equinoxes, the solstices, and how we're supposed to go through time as we are moving through those changes in season. Then we have the Venus cycle. It's, as I wrote there, the journey of change, death, rebirth. That's what we're actually going to get into right now. So let's move on to the next slide. I'm sorry, I'm coughing. My throat's irritated for a few days. Um, Next slide. Okay. Venus, the star that rises before the sun. This is so meaningful. I'm going to explain it to you right now. So if you read the Popol Vuh is the sacred book of the Maya Quiche people. The Popol Vuh is one of the most meaningful books that we have in the modern day in the Maya tradition because it tells the history of the oral tradition really well. Part of the Popol Vuh is like the mythical side of the story, the spirituality, the geocosmovision. Part of it is historical. Actually, the Popol Vuh ends when the invasion begins. They even get to tell the first parts of when the Spanish came here and the invasion. And um, one of the stories in the Popol Vuh talks about, and there's different theories about this, by the way, but it talks about a time in the past where the Maya were going, like the different people from the different Maya nations were going through a really difficult time because they could never see the sun. There was no sunlight. The sun would never come out. And they were praying and begging and giving offerings and just asking that please the sunlight comes because the earth was so cold. It was really difficult for them to survive in those conditions. I don't know. There's different theories about this. Some people say it could have been like the last ice age. Different people say different things. Nobody really knows. Up to you to believe whatever you want to believe and read about it if you want. But it's interesting, right? For them, that's like a historical time, right? The time where they could not see the sun. And I'll even read you at the end of this presentation a little quote from the Popol Vuh, where they talk about that like really bad part of history. But Venus at the time was visible. It was during its cycle, and we're gonna get into the different cycles of Venus. Something very relevant happened during Venus's cycle as the morning star. There are in a 584-day period, 4 cycles that Venus goes through. And for 260 something days, we'll get into it in a second. Venus is the morning star. What does that mean? Venus is the morning star. Venus rises before the sun. When you go out in the very early morning, before you see the sun, you very brightly see Venus. And so the Maya start speaking in the Popol Vuh as Venus showing up as a sign of hope because it's the star that comes before the sun. So Venus comes and it's like, okay, maybe since we can see Venus, the sun will finally come soon. It even talks about how different Maya nations, the Quiches, the Cachiqueles, a few other different nations, because in Guatemala, for example, we have many different Maya nations who speak different languages and everything, came together and they went to a specific place to basically just give offerings and pray that the sun comes. And there they found Tojil, Avilish, Hakavitz, and Nikakahta. I can never pronounce his name. Nikakahtakah. Okay, sorry. It's difficult. So basically, um, those are like the deities or the energies that represent the fire. So this part of the story tells us how the Maya found the fire, and through the fire they were able to survive and to keep themselves warm, and how the fire was gifted to them by these different energies, these different deities that represented spiritually the different kinds of fires. There are the fire of the sun, the fire of the earth, which is the magma, the fire of the wind, the different fires that there are. And so how different nations were gifted the power of connecting to the different fires in order to survive, in order to keep themselves warm during this difficult time when the sun would not come. And then after they were gifted the fire, they all went away, spread throughout the whole country. And they went to different mountains, they went to different hills, and they were gifted incense and they were gifted fire, and they all sat on top of different hills. In the Popol Vuh, you can read which one specifically. Um, you can visit them actually in Guatemala. Those hills and mountains obviously still exist. And we know them by name and everything. So they're very sacred, of course, because they're part of the story. And you know, they would light incense, they would light the fire, and they would pray and they would say gratitude, and they would be like, please sun come, please sun come, please sun come. And all of the nations got together at the same time to pray for the sun. And eventually, one day, and this is narrated beautifully in the Popol Vuh, they saw Venus appear. And right after it, the sun finally came. And they all could finally feel the warmth, and the earth finally got warm again. So it's interesting in the sense that Venus, when it enters its cycle as the morning star, and here's the fun part for us, Venus just entered its cycle as the morning star approximately 1 month ago. That's the cycle that Venus is currently going through. So, what does that represent for us right now in the modern world? Like, as we're going through that cycle right now, after hearing this story, perhaps you can understand what it represents is that Venus, what it does is it brings hope. It's kind of like the star, the planet, obviously, it's a planet, not a star, that stands in the center between the darkness and the light. The Maya have this concept of the darkness and the light, of the duality, right? Which is, we as human beings live in the world, and above us is the upper world, and below us is the underworld. The upper world represents the light, the underworld, which is known as Shivalva, represents the darkness. This is not only referring to the heart of the sky, the heart of the earth, so like the actual sky, the actual cosmos, and the actual earth and what's like under the core, at the core, I mean. Uh, it also represents something spiritual, which are the lessons that we're supposed to learn in life as human beings. Basically, this concept of the upper world and the underworld, the light and the darkness, teaches us in the Maya tradition that duality is just a part of life. You see it every day, right? You see the moon and the sun, the day and the night, the good and the bad, the feminine and the masculine, right? You see like all of this duality all around nature. And for the Maya, the perfect place to be is at the center between the light and the darkness, in the world, between the upper world and the underworld. In the Maya tradition, it is believed that the darkness is not bad. I feel like in the modern world, oftentimes we just don't want to face the darkness. We were never taught to face the darkness in an appropriate way. But the Maya narrated stories, which you can find in the oral tradition, also in the Popol Vuh, such as the story of the hero twins Hunahpu Balamke, the ones who were invited to go through all of the difficult trials that Xibalbá has to bring. Xibalbá is the underworld. And this trials, this story is a metaphor for how we're supposed to act when we're in the darkness. The Popol Vuh tells us two stories. The story of Hun Hunahpu and Bukuv Hunahpu, and then the story of Hunahpu and Shbalamke. Hun Hunahpu and Bukuv Hunahpu, they failed in the face of the darkness. Hunahpu and Shbalamke were successful in the face of the darkness, and they were able to come out and be the light. So basically, these are the teachings that the Maya tradition leaves us as. Literally, how do you face the difficult times in your life? How do you face those moments when you have difficult conflicts with other people? How do you face those moments where you get ill? How do you face those moments where life is going not great? And all of us have those moments where you experience, trauma and pain and fear and whatnot. And the story, long story short, basically teaches us that those who failed in Xibalbá acted very similar to a character of the Popol Vuh whose name is Bukuv Kakish. Bukuv Kakish is basically the one person you don't want to act like. Everything that could be wrong with him was wrong with him. He had pride, he was ungrateful, he had a super huge ego, he loved playing victim. He had everything that all the traits that sometimes we as human beings have, right? And that, you know, don't let us come out of Shivalva. So the Maya tradition teaches us about like what it means to be human, what it means to be in the darkness, how the darkness is your biggest teacher, how you can come out into the light. And why am I saying that? Because Venus is the star that comes before the light. Here's the thing. I don't know so much about the modern or the other traditions. That's not my area of expertise. But from what I have heard or from what I understand, many people believe that Venus is the planet of love, right? I think, like the planet of love and whatever. In the Maya tradition, Venus is not the planet of love. In the Maya tradition, Venus is the planet of conflict. It's the planet of war. It's the planet that's really kind of difficult to deal with as it's going through different cycles. Right now, 1 month ago, Venus entered the morning star cycle, which means it stands between the dark and the light because it's like it stands between the night and the day. It comes right before the sun. So, what Venus is bringing for the next 260 something days is hope, because it does bring hope on an individual and in a collective level as well, but it depends on how you handle it, because Venus is so extremely intense, you guys. It's so extremely intense. You don't understand. Like, if you've been having a weird month, I can tell you Venus is probably to blame for it. Because basically, um, Venus's energy is so intense. The way I can describe it best is like a wave in the ocean, right? A wave is so powerful. And if you try to stand against the wave, like, you can't fight the wave in the ocean. Try, you will fail. You'll be rolling around, it'll crash you, right? But if we know how to actually work with the energy of Venus, and that's what I want to teach you during this 3-day challenge, we can ride the wave. We can use all of that energy to our advantage so we can ride that wave. So Venus right now is showing you your light and your darkness. It's trying to push you into the light, and you can either surf through Venus and get into the light in a nice, easier way, or you can literally roll into the light in not such a fun way with all of those Shivalva teachings, right? And then it'll be hard. You might go through this difficult transition on a personal level. And that's why the Maya, and that's why we're doing a Maya fire ceremony tomorrow, did specific spiritual and psychological practices to support themselves as they were going through times such as the cycle of Venus right now. But hey, it's not just individual, it is also, I'm telling you, it is also collective. So what Venus brings when it transitions to morning star is a lot of shifts politically, a lot of shifts technologically, a lot of shifts. Is one of the specific things is shifts in power of the world, like shifts in how the world works. Everything crashes so it can be rebuilt. People move from power so new people can come into power. The minute Venus became the morning star is around exactly the same time as, for example, the Pope fell ill. And then he died during the morning star cycle. At the same time, in the last month, what else has happened? The stock market crashed, right? The US has gone into like this trade war with all of these different countries. We're seeing all of these political events that are so much like turmoil, shifts in power, which is literally specifically what Venus brings. So we can expect to continue to see things like this for approximately 200 more days. And okay, let's move on to the next slide, actually. So let me explain it, yeah? So the different phases of Venus. So this is Venus has 3 different main cycles. There's long cycles, medium cycles, and small cycles. The 4 phases belong to the small cycle. The small cycle of Venus is 584 days. And in those 584 days, Venus goes through 4 different cycles. The first one is the superior conjunction, which lasts 90 days. That's when Venus is hidden behind the sun, so it's not visible on Earth. We are not able to see Venus. The second cycle, that's the one, guys, that we just entered approximately 1 month ago. That's the 236-day cycle. Venus is visible before sunrise. That's when it's the morning star. And I just explained you a little bit what that means. Then there's the inferior conjunction. That only lasts 8 days. And also Venus is not visible again because Venus is between the Earth and the sun. We can't see Venus at that time. It's only 8 days. And then the last cycle is when Venus becomes the evening star, 250 days, where Venus is visible after the sunset. Each one of these cycles has a different meaning. Right now, we're only exploring morning star because that's the one we're currently going through. But each one of the cycles has a meaning. And I'm telling you, like, it's so weird, but the predictions of Venus are so on point every time Venus hits the different cycles. Exactly what it represents starts to happen in the world, again, both on an individual and a collective level. So I'm going to move on to the next slide because I want to show you a few examples and stuff. Uh, oh, wait. Okay, first, before I show you the examples. Okay, so I said 3 cycles, right? So we saw the 584-day cycle, which is the small one. Then Venus also has 8-year cycles. 8-year cycles. Guys, We're also going through a new 8 year cycle right now. 2025 is the beginning of a new 8 year cycle. That's why this year is going to be crazy. Okay. I'll explain here in a second. But basically, what does the 8 year cycle track? Firstly, it tracks 5 synodic cycles of Venus. What's a synodic cycle of Venus? One synodic cycle of Venus is one of the 584-day cycles. So 584 days, 5 times is exactly 8 years for us. So Venus, so like how it repeats, right? Venus roughly returns to the same position in the sky every 8 years. So 8 years ago, Venus was in a very similar position in the sky as it is right now that we just entered a new 8 year cycle. And just wait until I get into explaining you what that means because it's gonna blow your mind. But anyways, so the connection to the Chulkij. Okay, this one blew my mind. Okay, so the Chulkij is one of the calendars I explained to you. Is the human level calendar. For thousands of years, it matches the calendar of Venus. Like the calendar of Venus syncs with the Chulkij. So every 8 years, the new 8 year cycle of Venus always repeats, always starting on a day that is Ahmak. The number of the day changes, but it always starts on a day that is Ahmak. And same thing happens with the 104-year cycles. It always starts on the same Maya Cholkij day, which means they match the math of one calendar with the other. But okay, and that sounds cool and all, but if I had to explain you, like how did they do that? Like I don't know how they did that. It's so crazy. Like it's too perfect. Calendars are going to be matched. But the crazy thing is they did this with 20 different calendars. So anyways, I told you Maya math, crazy. So, okay, so what's the symbolism of the 8 year cycles? And we're starting a new one in 2025. This year, it'll bring us a lot of personal growth. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's going to bring us a lot of personal growth. It's going to bring us a lot of transformation. It brings a lot of shifts in energy. It brings renewals. It's a cycle of change. And just you wait until I tell you more about it. And then the long cycle of Venus is 104 years. So it's 13 times 8 years, right? So 13 Venus cycles of 8 years. Then they repeat again in the exact same energy. Venus returns exactly to the same spot in the sky with the same Maya energy, both the energy, so the Nawal of the Cholkij calendar and the number in this case, repeat exactly every 104 years. I don't know that you get how complex it is to pull that off, but it really is super crazy. So basically, uh, every 104 years, we go through a cosmic alignment, we go through a spiritual evolution, we go through the completion of cycles, we go through collective shifts. Okay, now you can close the slide for a second. Here's a debate, right? I don't have the answer. You won't have the answer. The Maya don't have the answer. Scholars don't have the answer. Nobody really has the answer. But there's a debate whether the last 104-year cycle of Venus started either in 2001 or it started in 2009. I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't tell you which it is. There's a really complex reason for why we're confused about it. You can find the calendar of Venus in the Dresden Codex. The original name of the codex was obviously not the Dresden Codex. Now they call it that nowadays because it's currently located in Dresden, Germany. You can actually go see the codex. It's in a museum. Give it back, but whatever. So basically, um, that's where we see the calendar of Venus. Thank you for not burning that codex because otherwise we might have lost the calendar of Venus. So because it's written in that codex, this is one of the calendars that we have not lost. But again, as I explained, it's so complex. I've been trying to understand it for months. I'm not going to lie to you. I think I kind of get it, but I don't fully get it because of how complex it is. So even people who have devoted their lives to studying it can still not agree if we started the last 104-year cycle in 2001 or in 2009. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you a few crazy things. So now back to the slides. Okay. This one I'm just gonna literally slide through really quickly because I want to get to the 8 year cycles. They're very interesting, but just years in which supposedly 104-year cycle started. 1689, the Glorious Revolution in England finished. 1793, the French Republic declared war on Great Britain, the Dutch Republic, and later Spain, initiating the French Revolutionary War. So every 104 years, really meaningful events happen in history, right? In 1897, the discovery of the electron happened. In 2001, well, we'll remember, right? 9/11. And 2001 marked kind of like a really big shift in the world and the way it works, right? Because of certain events such as 9/11. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay. So every 8 years, and I told you 2025 is one of those 8 years. We're in an 8 year cycle. Weird stuff happens, you guys. Like, it's so crazy. We went back hundreds and hundreds of years. We had a fun afternoon, my niece Selena and I, just researching what happened. But we also were able to talk to some experts and connect the dots. And it's been really interesting to observe the kind of events that happen every 8 years when Venus hits the same spot in the sky. So we just brought you a few dates. So 1865, American Civil War concluded. Please notice a lot of wars conclude in 8 year cycles, by the way. You see, world wars concluded. Like wars don't start often, some do, but wars finish. And think about that for a second. What are some of the biggest shifts in our society is when wars finish, right? Like the world is not the same after World War One. The world is not the same after World War Two. Every time a war finishes, everything changes technologically, scientifically, socially, politically, and in every single way, it marks the beginning of a new era. That's what Venus always marks, beginning new eras. So it's not no mystery why wars always conclude in 8 year cycles of Venus. However, some wars do start as well, by the way. So anyway, the American Civil War stopped, right? In 1905, the start of the first Russian Revolution happened. In 1921, the signing of the peace treaties after World War One happened, right? So kind of the conclusion of World War One. In 1929, Wall Street crashed and the Great Depression started. I mean, like that, I don't know if you guys know history, but like that is super significant as well. Like it changed the world completely, obviously, right? So every 8 years, we see things that change the world completely. In 1945, again, World War II ended, as I was telling you. 1961, the Berlin Wall was built. The Cold War escalated and the Bay of Pigs invasion unfolded. So a lot of things happened that all are super meaningful, obviously. 1969, the landing on the moon, which also marks a new cycle. I'll make a remark on this one. 8 year cycles also often bring a lot of breakthroughs in science and technology and the economy. Always. It's really intense, but like Einstein published like his theory of relativity in an 8 year cycle. I was just saying that the electron was discovered a little bit ago in a 104-year cycle. We landed on the moon on an 8 year cycle. You know what I mean? So like a lot of things happen scientifically and technologically, and we're gonna get into the technology soon. 1993, the creation of the European Union, kind of relevant, I would say. The first terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and the death of Pablo Escobar. I just thought that one was funny. Interesting. I mean, so, anyways, basically, then we all remember 2001, right? 9/11 happened. It was like also just like everybody was happy, freaking out the year before about like Y2K and like just the beginning of like the new millennia and all that crazy stuff. We saw a lot of shifts after 9/11 and like just the way in which the world works, right? Interesting, right? Terror attacks also happening like during those 8 year cycles, which you know, again, Venus is all about conflict, but always related to power, always related to politics, always related to stuff like that. 2009. Okay, so it's interesting. So we all remember 2008, I guess, right? Everything just kind of collapsed in 2008. So the It was 2009 was the aftermath of the global financial crisis. But you know what's also interesting? That year, Facebook exploded, Twitter exploded, cryptocurrency came out. And here's the weird part about that. 8 years later, exactly, Bitcoin exploded. So 8 years before it had come out, and 8 years later in 2017, exactly, that's when everybody was like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have bought Bitcoin or whatever, you know? And like we also see in 2017 like the emergence of like AI and a lot of different things. I just put Trump because it's just kind of interesting, by the way. Well, 2009 Obama was elected president, by the way, which was like a big shift as well. But also in 2017 it's interesting that Trump, that's when he got elected president. We wrote political polarization, and I think everybody knows what we mean by that. But you know when else Trump got elected? This year, 2025, exactly 8 years later, exactly when Venus comes back to the same position, right? It's really crazy, but move on to the next slide. What does it mean for us right now? Because we're in an 8 year cycle. Well, as I said, we saw Trump getting elected president again. The Pope just passed away. Stock market crashing, all these kinds of shifts and technology, the way in which, I mean, for me, like this is the first year where we all use AI so hard and it's like so normalized that we're like shifting our technological ways. So what it means and why is it mixing specifically, and why are we doing this event with two cycles of Venus, morning star and 8 year cycle? Because the morning star cycle is the one that can bring sometimes the greatest shifts as well, right? And so now you can hopefully understand why the Maya called Venus the planet not of love, but the planet of conflict and the planet of war. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be scary or it has to be bad. It just means we're going to experience some really strong shifts this year. My dad. So my dad always was like, Sulva, since I was a kid, he always told me, Sulva, I need you to prepare for 2025. I was like 7 years old and I was like, who cares what's gonna happen in 2025? That's like so far away. He always told me, my dad, okay, I'm so proud of him. In Guatemala, he was famous because he wrote this book during a time where people were literally forbidding from continuing to practice the oral tradition, from continuing to speak their Maya languages, from continuing to wear their Maya attire, because there was a genocide that lasted 30 years from the 1960s until 1996. So my dad wrote this book where he just wrote down everything he had learned from his teachers about the oral tradition as a way to make sure it doesn't get lost. And then he published it in Guatemala and tried to make it as available to all of the indigenous people as possible so that people who were losing their tradition would have a tool to still learn it, because parents would stop teaching children the tradition, the language, everything as a way to protect them from literally getting murdered. So of course we get it, right? And so I'm so proud of him because I go to e- literally, it's so crazy for me. I'm so proud of him. I go to every indigenous house in my country and I always, 99% of the time, see my dad's book there. And people are always like, oh my God, you're Carlos Barrios' daughter. Like, oh my God, you're dad, you know? So I'm so proud of him. But then I don't know how it happened by accident. My dad was weird. He never even tried, like, he had crazy life experiences. He wasn't even looking for them. They just like came to him. He was a very special man. He became very famous all of a sudden in the just the whole world as well because of the book as well, but for different reasons, not for protecting the oral tradition or being an activist or something, but because he was really, really, really good at predictions. My dad was crazy at predictions. It was crazy. And one day I asked him, like, how do you do it, dad? You know, like, how do you know, like, specifically what's going to happen, when it's going to happen? He could tell you by the date. He could tell you the name of who, the names and last names of who would be doing what when. And so my dad explained to me basically how the Maya were so good at predicting stuff. He said it was not necessarily intuition. It was not like the, oh, let me guess or whatever. It was more the way in which they were able to measure time in such a mathematically complex way. So for the Maya, time is not linear, time is a spiral. So, Elena, if you have a slinky, bring me one. So it's kind of like a slinky, right? It's kind of like a spiral. Go see if you find one because it would help me make my point. So, anyways, it's kind of like a slinky. Like picture a slinky. I don't know. Maybe I'll get a slinky. We'll see. But basically, time is moving in cycles. In the Maya tradition, everything is cyclical. No day actually repeats itself specifically, right? Uh, it's kind of like, okay, today's the 3rd of May, right? In 1 year from now, in the Gregorian calendar is going to be the 3rd of May again. It's not going to be the same 3rd of May, right? It's going to be the 3rd of May again in a different point in time. For the Maya, their math is so crazy. There's unique days. This is wild. There's unique days. In the Gregorian calendar, there's unique days that repeat themselves every 1 year, every 365-ish days, right? In the Maya calendar, their unique days repeat themselves every 5,200 years. It'll never be this date again, the date of today in the Mayan calendar. The only time we're going to see this specific date again is in literally 5,200 years from now. I'm telling you, the math, guys, the math. So, anyways, because the date is more than 20 different calendars. Like today is, what's today? Ayer fue. A ver, wait. I'm gonna read the chat to see if anybody's helping me remember what day it is today. Today was yesterday was no? Sorry, I'm just trying to remember. Okay. Nine Ahmad? Sí. Ah, qué interesante. It's Nine Ahmad because, okay. Anyways, today is Nine Ahmad. And we're in a trecena of what? Oh my God, I can't believe I lost track. Sorry, somebody's helping me trying to figure. We're in a trecena of Imor. I no wonder that explains so much for me. Huh? We're in a trecena of Canil? Okay. So are you sure? Because a lot of people are saying we're in a trecena of Imor. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. We're in a trecena of Canil? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So basically, okay. So today is 9 Imosh. Imosh is today's 9 Ahmak, I'm sorry. Ahmak is a unique day, right? We're in a day that is Ahmak within a 20-day cycle. But within the 260-day cycle, we're in specifically 9 Ahmak. That's also happening inside of a bigger cycle, which is a 13-day cycle, the 13-day cycle of Canil. That's also happening within a different cycle, which is a yearly cycle. That's also happening within an even bigger cycle, which is another cycle. So when you see the date is not like the 3rd of May of 2025 is 9 Ahmak inside of Canil, inside of this year, inside of that other cycle, inside of that other cycle. Anyway, the date is super long. And so basically, you know how I'm explaining you Venus right now? Like, if Venus right now is the morning star, is more likely that things like this would happen, right? In the world. If Venus is in an 8-year cycle, is more likely that certain things will be happening in the world. If today is Ahmak, is more likely that specific things will be happening today that are connected to Ahmak. But 9 also has a number. So today is 9, but 9 and Ahmak mixed together to come up with a new meaning is also more likely that we're going to be going through a very specific thing, specifically because Nine Ahmak. But it's not only a specific thing of Nine Ahmak. We have to mix that up with Canil, which also has a meaning. When it's Canil, certain things are more likely to happen as well, And when it's the energy of the carrier of the year is a certain energy, is not only that we have to look at Nine Ahmak, it's likely that this will happen. But on Trecena of Canil, that means something more like that will happen. But on this year, it means something more like that will happen. And where's Venus at? Okay, something like this will happen. And what other things are we looking at? So many things that basically the Maya can tell you exactly what's going to happen on any given day in time based on which cycle we're going through in every different calendar, right? So it's not only Nine Ahmak, it's Nine Ahmak when we're going through the morning star cycle on an 8 year cycle year, which is 2025, on a specific trecena, on a specific other thing, and a specific other thing, and another thing, and another thing that we look like. And those cycles repeat themselves. We have macro cycles, we have micro cycles. Today is Ahmak, it'll be in 20 days, it'll be Ahmak again. That's a micro cycle, for example, right? Today's 9 Ahmak, it won't be 9 Ahmak again for 260 days. That's a little bit bigger. But we also have cycles that last 52 years. We also have cycles that last 5,200 years. So basically, you're looking at so many different cycles. It's intense. My dad was obsessed with this, just looking at where we're at in time. And then he was like, this year, probably something in like this and this and that's going to happen. This year, probably war. This year, probably this year, probably that. He could even be specific as in this short period of months, probably in this trecena, something like this will actually happen. My dad predicted presidents. There's a funny story. I was remembering it with my sister yesterday about how he predicted the Pope who recently just passed away. I remember because I was in the hospital because I had appendicitis and it was like post surgery, and he was sitting there. We were watching the news because they were electing a new pope, and all of a sudden he turns around, he looks at me, and he's like, "I know who the new pope is gonna be." I'm like, "How could you possibly know that, Dad?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's gonna be Latino. I don't know exactly which country yet, but I know he's gonna be Latino." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, the Pope's gonna be Latino." And then he was like, "No, really, he is. And I know he's gonna call himself Francis." And I was like, "Yeah, you could not possibly know that." A few hours later, when they announced it, we all looked at him like, "Oh my goodness, what is wrong with you? Like, how can you do this?" So he predicted hyper specific things and how they were going to happen. Why am I telling you all this? Because my dad and my uncle too, they were obsessed with this topic. They were masters of the Mayan calendar. They were masters of the cycles that we observe in the Maya calendar. And I'm so grateful that he left me this and that I'm slowly starting to learn myself all about these calendars because it's truly life changing. But my point is, he told me that 2025 is going to be a really intense year, is going to be a year of shifts, is going to be a year of shifts for climate change, by the way. He left specific instructions. We really, really, really have to take care of water. That was like the one thing that popped up as it being like a very dangerous thing. Like in 2025, there being a shift when it comes to like issues with water and access to water. And I'm always super weirded out when I'm starting to see that because I'm like, oh my God, my dad has been telling me this since I'm a little kid. He was like, be close to water, make sure you have access to water. 2025 at the latest is what he always told me. And so we see all of these political shifts. We see all of this changes, and I know everybody's probably been noticing, right? Like this year has been kind of wild and crazy, right? And so many things are happening. Like I feel like we're constantly waking up to news these days that are just like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen with the world now? um but this is also an opportunity. The Maya thought that in this slinky that is time, right? For them, it's not a slinky, it's a feathered serpent, by the way. It's a snake-like spiral. But anyways, the Maya always thought that in the slinky that is time, when we hit the same point in the slinky, in the cycle that's in a straight line in the spiral, it's very likely that the same thing will happen that we can see in that point in reverse, right? So if there were in the same point in the spiral, you'll see all the wars, for example, like all the meaningful wars in the cycle. I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying. It's really hard to put this into words. I have like a mental image, but I don't know if you can actually understand. But it's really interesting. But the reason the Maya were so obsessed with being able to predict this is because they don't think the future is actually written. They just think based on the energy of every cycle that we're going through is just way more likely that we're all going to be in a certain mental state where things are just more likely to happen. And the reason they wanted to know this is because they thought we can work with that information in order to change it, in order to avoid bad things and actually create good things. We recently, 2012, as I told you, was not the end of the world. It was the 13 Baktun. It was the shift in a 5,200 year cycle. The ones that I was telling you about, they started repeating themselves again. I don't know who came up with that end of the world stuff, seriously. But anyways, very annoying. But basically, it was a massive shift, right? In like what's going to happen in the world. And my dad always told me since I was a kid, you're a kid in the Maya tradition until you're 13 years old. The new cycle is going to be a kid for 13 years. When was 2012? 13 years ago, right? He told me in those 13 years, we're going to see people acting very childish, very like kids. Politicians are going to be very childish. People are going to be so tired of the state of the world. You're going to start to see protests, a lot of people trying to make shifts, like this mass awakening. It's going to shift that things used to develop more slowly and now they're going to develop to moving more quickly, the way in which we see shifts both individually and collectively. He always told me it's going to be a really intense time emotionally because with a mass awakening comes a lot of like, intense emotions, right? And like shift and change always creates intense emotions. So people are going to get divided. There's going to be, and I remember him telling me all of this way before 2012. And as I've been witnessing the last 13 years, I'm like, Dad, oh my goodness, you knew everything that was going to happen. But 2025 is the year, guys, is the year where we start to see the biggest shifts. And my dad always told me we can go one or two routes, and that starts in 2025. Either we really go downhill or we really have to come together and get it together, and then things can actually be good. And he always told me the key to this year, the key to starting this new cycle that starts in 2025 was returning back to our roots, coming back to nature, learning self sustainability again, protecting the earth because we're destroying it, and also protecting ourselves because the Maya truly believe that in order to have an impact collectively, you have to first work on yourself individually. And so this is a time for personal work, for collective work. And then we just entered the cycle of Venus, and I was like, you know what? I just have to make a whole event about telling people about this because it's just too specific. It's just too interesting, isn't it? And so Venus, as a morning star, brings hope, guys. It's the star that comes before the sun. But come on, in the Popol Vuh, it tells us the Maya were not going through an easy time. They were freezing cold. They were crying. They were thinking they were going to die right before the sun came, right? But what did they do? They got together. The different nations came together to ask for the fire, to discover the fire together, which helped them survive. They put their differences aside and they came together and they worked together and they were given their gifts. And then they spread out and they went back to where they were from and they were continuing to practice what they learned as they brought their power together. And it was that togetherness, it was that ability to say gratitude, to look inward, but to also look outward outside of yourself, to connect to other people, to connect to nature. That's what brought them the strength. And that's what marked the beginning of a new cycle for them. But that was a good cycle, is when the sun came. So I feel like right now in the next 200 days, we have a choice, right? Is like, are we going to get stuck in how intense Venus is? And are we going to let that energetic wave that Venus brings, are we going to let it just like crash us and like make us roll around in the water? Or are we going to be able to actually ride it? And that's why we wanted to invite you to this 3-day Venus challenge to share all about these secrets with you. I'll finish it now with a quote from the Popol Vuh. This is from the Popol Vuh, from the version of Sam Kolop, by the way, which is my favorite version of the Popol Vuh, my favorite translation. So it says, waiting anxiously for the dawn, waiting to see the rise of the sun. They contemplated the morning star, the great star at the birth of the sun, the one that ignites the vault of the sky and the surface of the earth, the one that guides the created humanity, the formed humanity. Popol Vuh Samkolop. So to finish it, I just wanted to remind you today was theory, right? Tomorrow is actually going to be practice, but you needed all of this context before we can get into the practice. Like if we would have just done a Mayan fire ceremony to receive the new cycle of Venus, and you didn't even know what we're talking about when we're talking about the new cycle of Venus, that wouldn't have been so impactful. So today we didn't get into practice. Today we got into theory, but starting tomorrow and also on day 3 of this challenge, we're actually going to teach you how to ride the wave so that you're not crashed by it, how to take advantage of the energetic shift that Venus is going through right now. This year, wild. We've been going through many different energetic shifts, not just Venus. We started the year with like all the Maya New Years came together at the same time. Then the equinox came together. Then Venus started doing its thing. Then we had like a set of trecenas that are always very intense. Like it's been intense. I mean, I've felt it. I don't know if you guys have felt it, but it's been intense. But that's the beautiful part about it is when we become conscious of it, then we can ride that wave. We can use it to our own advantage. We can use it for the most profound versions of healing, of transformation, of communication, and even of having a great and positive impact in the world if we learn how to come together and put our differences aside and actually create that collective change that we so desperately need to see right now, if not for ourselves, then for the planet. Please, like just for the health of the biodiversity, for the planet. We need this desperately right now. And so, my dad's quote that I always remember, and I'll tell you the story very briefly, is my dad was part of the Council of Elders here in Guatemala. And one time they had a meeting. All the elders came together from different nations. They traveled all to get together and to talk about the problems that the world was facing, the problems that their communities were facing. And my dad said he noticed there was a very humble man who lived deep inside a mountain, and he had come down from the mountain just for this meeting. And he noticed the meeting had been going for hours, and everybody was talking very loudly. Everybody was sharing their opinion. Everybody was like, no, no, this is what we have to. This is what we have to. This is how we save our communities. This is how we have a positive impact. This is how we change the state of the world. My dad noticed this man was silent and just listening the whole time. And at one point during the meeting, finally, the old man stood up. And his presence, as my dad, his energy was so strong, everybody immediately went quiet. And he said, I only have one thing to say. The spirituality of nowadays has a name, and that name is action. He said, you're sitting here screaming at each other, talking about problems and blah, 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 blah. No, 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 I'm right. No, you're wrong. This and that, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, who cares? Does the world care that we're having this meeting? Does the community have care that we're having this meeting? Is this meeting even going to change our lives? Like, are tomorrow we going to go back to life and just forget about it? He said, you guys talk and talk and talk and talk. And I'm tired of talking. How about we take some action? And so I feel like this year is the year to implement what that old man said. And my dad always, he must have told me this story thousands of times in my life, really. The action story. It's like, Sulva, on a personal level, you want to heal yourself? Yeah, you might be able to know what are the things that you have to do, but do them. Take action. You want to have an impact? Take action. Simply take action. And I think that maybe that's what we're missing today. And so that's it for today. The invitation is that you join us tomorrow, same place, same time, for a big surprise. Tata Alberto, a Maya spiritual leader from the Cachiquel Nation, is going to be coming, and he's going to be guiding us through an ancient Maya fire ceremony. The Maya ceremonies date back thousands of years. They've been done in the exact same way for thousands and thousands of years. And it's beautiful and it's powerful and it's about gratitude. And we're going to be practicing what those people in the Popol Vuh were practicing just right before the sun came out with their incense and their fire. And you don't have to really do anything or worry about tomorrow. You don't have to bring anything unless you want to. You're welcome, of course, if you want to bring some candles, if you want to bring some incense, if there are things that help you connect, everything is welcome here. You don't have to. If you don't do it, doesn't mean you're going to connect worse or something. Like that's okay. You don't have to worry about it. And there's nothing you have to do to prep. Tomorrow we're going to prep you. I'm going to do a little introduction just to explain you what to do and everything, and then we're going to get into the Maya fire ceremony, and it's going to be super awesome. So yeah, I hope you guys found this interesting. I'm really curious. Wait, let me close this. I'm really curious. Two things. Have you guys also been feeling since this year started how intense the energy has been on a personal level? If yes, can you type yes in the chat because I'll be reading you after and I'm really curious. And if no, also type it because I'm actually really curious. So I'll just write that in the chat. And also, my other question is, are you guys ready to ride the wave instead of being crashed by it? Because I definitely am. So I'm happy I'm here too. So also type yes in the chat if you're ready. I'm ready. Say yes. Yes, I'm ready. All right, cool. Then thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time. I really hope my words were valuable to you. I really hope you learned something new. I'm super grateful for the amount of people who are here today. I was really excited and I just can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. If you want to watch the recording of this event, don't worry. We're going to send it out via email very soon. So you can rewatch it. You can go slow through the slideshow if you like didn't get to make notes quickly enough or something. And yeah, happy Venus shift. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have an awesome rest of your day. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.